Hi, I'm Tracey.
Hi, and I'm Faye, and welcome to More Better with Tracey and Faye, the podcast where we help you become a better, more confident communicator at work, one episode at a time. Today, we're talking about Grammarly's report on the state of business communication, what the data tells us about the business impact of poor communication practices, and what we believe is the solution. Hint, it's not more technology and tools, so stick around.
Claim: people need more training to communicate effectively at work. That's what I said. Here's what I mean. So Grammarly's, over the last few years, has published two different reports. One, State of Business Communication 2023, and then the follow-up, State of Business Communication 2024. And the data that they uncover about the losses and problems that come from miscommunication, human-to-human miscommunication, poor communication, lazy communication, etc., in the workforce. And the data that they came up with was really compelling. And it wasn't really a surprise to me, and I know it wasn't to Faye as well, but it did tell the story about the really negative impacts of poor communication, miscommunication in businesses. So some of the stats: miscommunication in the workplace costs U.S. businesses $1.2 trillion every year.
Wow.
That equivalent number for Canada would be what, $150-ish billion. And knowledge workers, which are really anybody other than people whose roles are repetitive tasks or, say, manual labor, knowledge workers spend a whopping 88% of their time communicating across multiple channels, email and texting and group chats and Slack channels and Teams chats and all this thing. 88% of their time. And some roles, HR, I'm looking at you, even higher. Yes, communication is now synonymous with work. It's not work that you do and then you communicate about it. Communication at work seems to be becoming a synonymous thing. And what does that lead to? Again, the data reveals productivity decreases 40%. Timelines get extended by 37%. Costs increase by 32%. Decrease in productivity, things not getting delivered on time, costs going up, all because of poor communication. That doesn't take into account, you might have great systems, you might have great processes, but for so much of what work gets done by communicating. Human-to-human communication. Hey, Faye, I need to take a look at that report.
Oh, God.
Right? That's a useful communication. No, it's not. But that's the kind of stuff that goes on.
Yeah, every day. Every day.
Faye, oh, well, here's a link to the 16 reports.
Oh, God.
Pick the one that works for you.
Don't forget the Excel documents. Don't forget the Excel
documents. Yeah. Go to tab 32, look for A26. And then let's talk about the impact on people. So that's the impact on business. But the impact on people, morale takes a hit, confidence takes a hit, stress grows up, and all of these negative impacts are being felt by well over half the population. So what's happened in the 12 months between those two reports? Professionals have seen a 78% increase in communication frequency.
Oh, my God.
Because it wasn't enough before. 12 months later, It's 78% more of frequency and a 73% increase in the variety of communication channels. So communication is on the rise and effectiveness is on the decline. And what is the solution that Grammarly comes up with? Which up until now, I thought their report was great. More technology, more tools. And yet, for years, we've been adding technology and tools. Nothing has been solved. It's only going to get worse. So, and even in Grammarly's own reports, they talk about the fact that technology is part of the problem. And then at the end of the report, especially 2024, they're pushing more technology. So the logic is lost on me. And here's why. I've been diving into this data for a couple of months now. And nothing in the first report and nothing in the second report says we need to teach people to do this better. This is a skill that can increase. This is a capability that can increase. So they are ignoring the fact that humans can learn this stuff. They are ignoring the fact that human lack of knowledge because of lack of education about how to communicate effectively at work. They ignore that that is even an issue. It's like the report assumes people can communicate. There's just too much of it. Except the first part of what I just said is not right. Anything to add?
Oh my God. Well, firstly, thanks for walking me through all those stats. A couple things. What I liked what you said about that idea that communication is no longer just part of your work. It is your work. And that's like, I'm having an aha moment right now, because I think that we often think about, oh, I'm going to go ticky-tacky do my work, right? I'm a programmer, I'm an analyst or whatever. And then I'm going to communicate about it. When in fact, what I'm seeing across my clients and across my work is that they actually have to communicate. Like, that is part of the job. So that's interesting to me. What I was really surprised about was how much writing we're doing at work. Yeah. Over the years, I've seen the increase of videos and podcasts in internal communications and in change tactics, like more training. And I always attribute it to that people aren't reading anymore. When in fact, we're actually asking them to read more because we're writing more. What I'm also seeing is more, both internal and externally, more newsletters, more blogs, more SharePoint sites, more Teams channels with, underscored by SharePoint sites, and email, of course. Our inboxes are overflowing. So to me, I had never thought of it that way. We are reading more and we are writing more. And our leaders are telling us that the effectiveness of our communications continues to decline. So I get this vision of like just more stuff flying everywhere. And for those of us who worked in internal comms, like our job sometimes is like, trying to like wrangle that in, but it's a problem. And there's just more noise in the air rather than trying to get that noise in those channels. And I would say that just as you were talking, it has great data and great stats. And we're going to talk about that all year, I suspect. About the impact of writing and its effectiveness for productivity, reputation, but it doesn't talk about upskilling. And I feel like that's what's missing, is the upskilling of our people.
Yeah. I want to pick up on what you said about the fact that we are writing more and reading more, because that might sound like if we do more of it, we ought to be better at it. But there's an interesting data point in the second report, the 2024 report, where they broke out how much time people spend communicating at work, but they break it out not by role, they break it out by generation. Yeah. So you look at the oldest people in the workforce right now, the baby boomers, says they spend 25 hours a week on average communicating out of a typical 40-hour week. Gen X, you and me, we come in at 30 hours. Gen Z, 38 hours. I got to say that Gen Z. It just doesn't sound right, Gen Z. Gen Z. Sorry, Canada. And millennials, 40 hours. So what this is saying is that for those younger generations that are in the workforce coming up, they communicate all the time because they've been communicating all the time through their fingertips on little data all their entire lives. So I was really giving this a lot of thought about this generational difference. And here's what I've come up with, and I'm curious what you think about it. So when we were growing up in the pre-internet world, and that was in life, I mean, we were young, we entered the workforce in that era, there was not nearly as much to read. Other books, yes, magazines, newspapers, all of that. Yes, all of that print material. Yeah. The print material was there to read. But most people didn't have subscriptions to 15 different magazines. in the way that people now will have access information from, multiple sources because there's no limitation. There's no cost limitation. There's no delivery limitation like there used to be. And we would write less, but we wrote with more intention because we were writing a letter or maybe a postcard, or at business, we'd be writing a memo or maybe a business letter. So we had fewer things that we were writing and fewer things that we were reading. And I believe as a result, we took more time and attention for both of those activities. And I seem to recall, maybe I'm wrong, but I think I learned how to do a business memo and a business letter in high school.
Yes, I remember that. I would take, I don't know if you took that, but I took keyboarding.
Yeah, typing. They called it typing back then.
That's right. They call it keyboarding now. Okay. But yes, you're right. Typing. And then as part of the exercises, we would write business letters. So you're right. Totally. Yeah, I remember that.
We had far fewer channels and we had more time because actually while I was sitting there writing my letter, writing it with a pen or doing it with a typewriter, I wasn't being pinged 30 times in that time to go, oh, I got to go see what this person said. Oh, I got to go see what that person said. So our time to communicate, whether that be receiving the information, reading it, making a decision on how I want to respond to what I'm reading, or the act of writing, whatever it is I want to put out there to the world or to a person, there was just more time and intention around that stuff. And so imagine if we did that today. Imagine if we taught everybody what's the right way to use email in a business setting? What is the right way to use a group chat in a business setting? What is the right way to communicate internally with your colleagues and internal partners? What is the right way to communicate externally to suppliers, prospects, clients, etc., through all the different channels that we have available to us now, including LinkedIn, big part of business, right? Or in some parts of the world, Facebook is a big part of business. So imagine what high school would be now if everybody was taught all those different ways to communicate at work through all those different channels, and everybody learned that there is a right way to do this and a wrong way to do this, and there was more time and intention given. We wouldn't be in the place we are today. So these days, the only people who get taught how to use these different channels properly are professional communicators. Because we learn it in school, and in those classes today, I am sure that they are being taught. There's all these different channels. How do you use them to your greatest effect? Because as communicators, we are always in our work world, we are trying to get people to do something, to understand something, to adopt a new process, to, say yes to this or that, the other thing. So as professional communicators, we're taught these are all the channels. Here's how you use them to their greatest effect. But that, to me, should no longer be the purview of just professional communicators because everybody needs this now. And it's not happening. All that's happening, and Grammarly is, I just keep coming back to them because they just keep saying, tech is part of the problem, but use our tech. It'll be better. And it will not get better. Writing well takes intention. Intention takes critical thinking. Critical thinking and writing well go hand in glove. You cannot do one without the other. Critical thinking and communication skills are two things that companies really, really want. And in fact, we've heard from managers who say our people they're not good at the critical thinking piece. Enter AI. We're going to use AI to write for you. So not only are you losing the skill of how to write, how to communicate through your fingertips, as I like to say, fingers on keyboard, you are losing the skill of the critical thinking that goes into it. And do we really want entire workforces that are lacking critical thinking and writing skill? I would think that we don't. And this is a big concern for me, that the push for AI is robbing us of our ability to develop critical thinking skills in addition to writing skills.
What we're hearing from leaders, from our experiences over the past year especially, is that they don't know how to put together that information. They don't know how to organize. They don't know what's important. And that's critical thinking, writing. It is frightening to me that that claim around robbing people of the very human skill of critical thinking and communication, which you say go hand in hand. Agreed. But if we're robbing people of that, then what is the quality effectiveness? What are the results of that other type of writing? So that's interesting to me. The other piece that came up for me was teaching people how to be more intentional about their communication. I think that's what I find when I coach or help people with their communication or writing and my, in different roles or different jobs. People want to know how I got there. The result might be the thing, the email, the article, whatever that is, but they actually want to know what goes on. And you're right. Like, I don't think that's not taught. We as internal communicators, we get to practice all that. We have the education. Not a lot of people do. So what do? They just maybe send stuff into the air. I've heard that from another HR leader. She wanted us to teach people what's the difference between email and a Teams chat, because she didn't feel her people knew that. And what's interesting is, like, you and I kind of instinctively know, but it's interesting that has come up. And the more and more channels we have, the more and more that will come up. And people will rely on generic tools to help them. But if their intention or objective isn't clear, they won't achieve those objectives. And again, it just becomes stuff in the air.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
I feel as though there is just a little bit of a crisis going. Maybe it's not a little crisis. Is a crisis ever little? I think this is a crisis. I think this is a crisis in the world. And now I can't speak the world. I don't know what business communication, the state of it is in Europe and Asia, other places of the world, South America. But speaking from deep experience in Canada and the US, it's a crisis. If you have the portion of your people who come into the workplace who have innate skills, they get it, they're good at stringing sentences together, their communication is good and clear, that's great. How many of those people know how to coach anyone else on how to do that? Nobody I've talked to who consider themselves pretty solid communicators at work.
What comes up for me is around how people are currently learning about how to communicate and write in the workplace. My observation is that we've learned through criticism. I'd write something, send it to someone to review, usually a leader or a colleague, or even a partner in another part of the business. They'd go back, they redline it, incorporate their changes. Feels great, doesn't it? That we've worked with teams where they get sad because they get to the point where they're like, just tell me what to write. Super smart people, yet they feel so defeated. Then you get into that mindset of, I'm not a good writer, I'm not a communicator. It's because they are learning through the red pen of death.
So everything we've talked to up to this point, it's about the hard data around poor communication. Here's my claim. Business communication is often viewed as a squishy soft skill. It is not a soft skill. One of the challenges with talking about communication at work is that it's thought of as squishy, and yet all over the internet, I read about how communication is like the big missing thing. Communication skill is sought after by companies. Why is it sought after by companies? Because it increases effectiveness, productivity, efficiency, profitability, engagement, innovation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's so important, but it's called a soft skill for whatever reason. Soft is squishy. There's nothing squishy about this. But look at what Grammarly did. The first report comes up with all the data about all the time, money, engagement, opportunity, everything that is lost due to poor communication. Great data, hard data, painted a pretty bleak picture. When they came up with their solutions in report number 1, it included in it what they said 5 new rules of business communication. Hard data, telling a terrible story, and this is their solutions. Number 1, Practice good communication hygiene. I have no idea what that means. Wash your hands before you type, I guess. Clarify unspoken expectations. Sure. That's,
Okay.
pretty consistent with how one should run their life. Rigorously curate your tech stack. Yeah, it's all about tech. Don't even know what that means. Number 4, sing the praises of soft skills.
Boo.
I don't think that helps. Singing won't help. And number 5, pave the path for newcomers.
Oh.
Which means, I don't know, I guess if you're bringing someone in from another country, you want to make them welcome. Sounds like an immigration sort of thing, that you want to pave the path for the newcomers. So it's just so squishy. And nothing in those recommendations will move the needle. They won't move the needle because they don't address what is missing. That big, huge, gigantic gaping hole that is missing in the business environment, which is most people don't feel confident in their ability to communicate effectively at work. And guess what? Most people want to. They're hungry for it. They want to know what is good. They want to know what they're doing right, and they want to know what they need to be doing differently. And I mean, I've had this experience at workshops where I'm looking at someone's work. We're at the point everyone's kind of working on their own stuff. And I remember this one woman in particular, she's like, can you look at it? And I said, you nailed it. It's exactly right. It's the right tone. It's the right information. You've presented it in a really effective way. Way to go. Beaming. She didn't know that her instinct was the right one. And then, we give her some frameworks to work within and some guidance. And then what happens? Her confidence goes up. She feels less unsure every time she hits send.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the way you and I are when we write. I don't know that everything I send out into the world, well, I know everything I send out in the world is not going to get the result that I want.
Sure.
But I don't question the quality of what I sent out. I don't go, oh, could I have done this differently? Because I don't know what's going on at the other end. The person at the other end who's not giving me the response I want, they've got things going on in their life and in their inbox I have no idea about. So, but I have enough confidence in my own ability that I don't worry so much. So the lack of focus on, let's give people the skills. Let's give people the capability. It's missing in both these reports, and it's missing all over the place, frankly. And that's why it is so much on my mind. That's why I think it's a crisis.
So what's the role of leaders in upskilling their teams' writing and communication skills? Because they're the ones who want their teams to be more effective, to be better. What is their role in all this?
Well, those leaders who call us in, they know what good looks like, and they know how to do it. They don't know how to coach it on their teams. So that's a missing link, because as a leader, you're going to get the most out of your team when you coach them from a place of certainty and empathy. It's always the way you're going to get more out of your people. And I would say, especially when it comes to writing and communication, it needs to come from certainty and empathy, because if you come from a place of criticism, like you said earlier, for so many people, that's like cuts right into the soft underbelly. People equate their ability to write with their value as a human being. I've seen people, I know you have too, right? You meet people who are super smart, intelligent, engaged, good at their job, all the rest of it. And then they're like, oh my God, I just suck at writing.
Yeah. I see that all the time.
And they take it as a personal flaw. And it's not, it's teachable. I was having this conversation with someone else who does similar work to what you and I do. And she said, it's been her experience. People think you're either a born writer or you're not. And the piece that's missing is you can learn this. This can be taught. This can be learned. And it should be. So as a leader, their role is educating themselves so that they can coach from a place of empathy and certainty to help elevate the skills of their team, just like they do in whatever whatever widget it is. If you are in procurement, it's a certain skill set. If you're in accounting, it's a certain skill set. If, you're in sales, it's a certain skill set. So you teach that stuff, those technical skills. But communication is so vital, as we now see with all this data. Working and communicating is the same thing these days. So why are leaders focusing more on the technical skills about, say, the task at hand, and ignoring the technical writing and communication skill that will bring success and build confidence and build capability? And that is the role of leaders, and they need to recognize not just that their team is lacking in certain skills and capabilities, but so are they. That's my thought on that. What about you?
What comes up for me is, how did my leader learn? They're bringing that into how they're now teaching or editing their people's work. And
Yes.
redline edits is not coaching, right? Redline edits can be if you have a conversation about it. If you're going to have a conversation about objective, audience, purpose, like, that sort of thing, and why you're making these changes, that I think that's more coaching. Yeah. But what I often see is, due to time, they're just redline, and you get to a point where they're like, just tell me I just want my leader to tell me what to write. And how are they supposed to grow? How are they supposed to move in their career?
Mm-hmm.
So that's frightening. What about online learning workshops that people can easily grab and take? What are they missing, possibly? Or what would you suggest?
I think individuals going off and doing a LinkedIn learning course or joining a course that's offered by other organizations out there who teach in this space, there's nothing wrong with it. But I don't know that it's going to move the needle for your team or your organization when just one person goes off and gets educated. I really believe that for this to make a difference in an organization, you need to have a critical mass of your people learn and know this stuff. So you have a framework. So if you and I, we have this way of teaching how to do this. And if someone from, Acme Houses, doesn't exist as far as I know, Acme Houses comes in and Joan takes our course, and Joan's happy because she's got all these new tools and understanding, etc. So she goes back and she starts applying that at her work. But nobody else at her work has that same knowledge. So, and she's only just learned it. So it's pretty hard to go back and say, well, this is why I did it this way. Because when you just learn something, you retain something like 10% of it. Where the deep learning happens is through practice. And when it comes to writing and communication, coaching is also a big part of that. And so I would say the greater benefit will happen when there are groups of people who work at the same organization, learning the same stuff at the same time, and then say they do a half-day workshop and they all retain about 10% of what they learned. But then they become a group and they can talk to each other. They can share work with each other. They can remind each other. They can deepen their learning with each other because now they have a shared framework from which to operate. So we need to do this learning together. So we are all coming from a similar place when we are asking and giving feedback. That's my thoughts on that.
I love that, because you create community. If writing and communicating is something we do in the workplace every day, why wouldn't we create community networks wherever that is, whether it's pockets in a department, whether it's something that's enterprise-wide? Why wouldn't we create community and safe spaces for people to learn and coach each other? But if the leader is not present, then how do they know what their team is learning? How do they know what their team is looking at? How do they know that their that their team is maybe perhaps looking at something in a different way, writing in a different way. And what's going to happen is that, they'll send information to their leaders. Someone feels, oh, I took this course or I took this learning and I'm going to send it up. And guess what? Red line edits happen, right? And bad habits emerge.
They resurface
because
and
it's easier.
Yeah. Applying new learning is hard. It takes time because it's not natural for you, but you're like, oh, I learned this and it made so much sense when I was learning it. And yeah, you're right. If the leader is not present for the learning, the leader won't know how to coach in a new way.
Yeah. So let's teach them.
Let's teach them.
Let's teach them. All right. Well, thank you so much for walking us through the report. It's one of the best ones out there. And I'm sure we will continue to cite the report and other research in future podcast episodes. If you agree or want to comment, please do. We'd love to hear from you. And with that, I'm Faye.
And I'm Tracey. Join us next time on More Better with Tracey and Faye.